Okay, so I'm going to show you a technique today to create some depth and distance when you're doing a tree line over a sky. I'm going to use some gum arabic, and gum arabic is a medium which slows the flow of the paint, so it's great for doing distant trees. So what I'm going to do first of all, no drawing today, no photo. I'm going to come in with a layer of water. A nice layer all the way across. Then I'm going to pour a teaspoon or around about a teaspoon of gum arabic onto the paper. I'm just going to flow that across as well, so this is going to slow the flow of the paint. It's also going to give me a little bit more time. Just make sure you rinse your brushes off, so they will go hard, but it does come off. It's the same solution they use to actually set points on brushes when they're new. So the first colour that I'm going to go in with is a dab of raw sienna. So I don't want this to be too watery, so I've taken a dab of water in with my raw sienna with my round number 10. So this is quite a creamy consistency. I'm going to come in and start to get a little bit of colour into the sky. You'll find that the paint doesn't quite move in the same way, but it still softens in, and that's absolutely fine. I'm going to get that warmth in at the bottom, and then loaded my brush up, I'm going to dip into some ultramarine blue. I'll bring this in towards the top half of the sky. You'll find that they don't really flow together, which is quite useful with it being a yellow and a blue. I'm just going to apply that on, so I've got a really nice pale looking sky. I have got a little bit of cadmium red deep here. If I just dab some of this in, where it's mixing with the blue, it will make a purpley colour in the sky. Where it's mixing with the yellow, it'll make a peachier colour. And this is just going to connect the two. I'm going to take some of the ultramarine dab it over. There's a little bit of water in this, not a lot, and a little bit of some burnt umber. And what I'm looking for is a really nice dark, so it'll be near on black. That's going to be my silhouette colour. So I just try that on here. That's good. So it's a very dark grey black. And I've got a little bit of burnt sienna, so a dab of water with your round number 10, and I've got a little bit of burnt sienna there as well. Okay, so I'm going to come in now and start to create some distant trees. I'm going to use a combination of colours, the first being this burnt sienna. Take a dab of this ultramarine into the raw sienna, so that I've got a sort of muted olivey green. I can use a little bit of that to start to create some foliage or some distant trees as well in the background. So this is my background layer. And then I've popped this onto a board rather than taking it to table because I'm going to twizzle myself around. So I've got my rigger and I'm picking up some of the burnt umber. Now if I twizzle myself this way, and what I'm going to do is paint downwards because I find it easier to go to a point painting downwards. And this now we're going to start to put some distant trunks in. Now this paint can be quite runny because the gum arabic totally slows the flow of the paint, so it's not going to expand out too much. And we're creating a really nice depth. So we've already got one layer. This is now becoming the next soft layer. Just running these trunks down. The beauty of the gum arabic is that you can keep these layers quite light as well in tone, because you can still go quite watery. You want to vary the heights of these, you want to vary the gaps in between these, you want to vary the angles of these. Everything in nature is non-uniform. So you want to make sure that nothing stands out too much. Twizzle back round for you. You can see how that's starting to appear. I'm going to come back to my round number 10 and come into the really nice dark colour now. And I'm going to start to build some trees over these trees. Now I'm still working wet in wet and I'm still working within the gum arabic. It will start to dry and at some point I will have to dry it and then come back in on dry, but this is creating a really nice soft depth. And we're going to keep these all nice and low. I'm dabbing and doing a little bit of circling as well, keeping my tip of my brush upright. You can bring in varying heights. You can bring through some of the dark foliage onto these tree trunks that you've just done as well. Just you want variety. All the time you want variety. That's building up really nicely. So I'm out of that colour, but I can, with a rigger, twizzle back round, and whilst it's still damp enough, it's still got a bit of a sheen, I can bring in a few darker ones with that dark colour. Just making these a little bit more bold, so not quite as fine as the last lot. And it's everything that I'm doing now is giving a great sense of depth. Getting a really nice build up of trees. Okay, you can, if you want to, pop in a few very fine on these ones, branches. It is quite nice to see a few soft ones behind the hard ones later. Just remember to vary where they come out from the trunk. Stagger them, vary the angles so they work nicely together. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. You can really see the beauty of how this works. You've got those really glowing colours underneath, the softness of the olive green and the burnt sienna, and then that gradual darkening as you're coming forward. That already works fantastically without doing any more, but you can do more. So what I'm going to do is to take a fresh layer over the top onto dry. So with this olivey green, I'm taking a little bit more of the ultramarine in, and I've got some gamboge yellow just on my palette here. It looks very similar to raw sienna, but it's gamboge yellow. I'm just going to make a more vibrant green. So using the olive green as the base just means that it's not going to be too bright. We don't want to overpower it with a really fresh green. So this is my round number 10. I've loaded the brush up with the paint, and I'm going to hold it flat like this, and I'm going to catch the surface of the paper. Load it up again. Hold it flat, catch the surface of the paper. So I'm working in an arch to create some foliage for a tree. This I'm using Saunders Waterford, and it's a rough paper, so there's some surface to catch here because that's always helpful. This is going to build up this area. I've also got some of that dark colour still. I'll load the brush up with that, and I'm going to come along this bottom section exactly the same, the dry brushing, holding the brush flat. You're scraping the paper rather than dabbing. What I sometimes see when my students are doing is they'll dab like that. It's not dabbing, you're scraping it across the paper. If you can feel your nails scraping on your board, that's a good sign that you're doing it right. So that's just pop some texture in at the bottom. And I'm going to twizzle upside down again because I find it easier to paint to a point upside down. Then I'm going to take a round number 6. I'm going to come in with some dark. So this is that same mix of ultramarine and burnt umber. And I'm going to bring in a nice dark tree trunk on this side. Where the foliage is, I'm skipping. I'm bringing the tree trunk through. So I'm using a round number 6 at the minute, but then I will go down as soon as I feel that I need to a rigger just to put the little branches in. So I'm just going to do one tree here. I'm staggering the joins onto the branches onto the trunk so that they don't come off at the same place. I'm breaking through, and it's just important now that I've got no floating foliage. So I don't want anything floating. I'll swap down to my rigger. Load that up with the paint. Then I can bring in, and I'm resting on my little finger. I can bring in some little branches. Just come through. And you can take these branches off the page, bring them further than the foliage. If you look at a tree, there's often branches coming out at the top that have no foliage on. And we're just working in a really nice tree. Any of these little bits you put at the bottom, those sharper twiggy bits, always help to add that sense of distance. We're just checking all the time that we haven't got any floating foliage, we've not missed anywhere. You can do lots of these trees, but just on this picture I'm just going to do the one so you can really see the softness. If you want to put more on, my advice is to try to miss the soft ones and pop them so you can see the soft ones behind. So if you can see here, I've gone in between those soft ones so you can still see them, and then it really does give you that sense of depth and you don't lose the work that you've done already. So I'm just popping in a few twiggy bits here at the bottom where I've popped in all of the dry brushing, just to help give a sense of depth. And then I'll twizzle back round for you to have a look. When you get it round, you can always make a few final tweaks. Just add a little bit more this side, I think, just to give it a nice sense of balance. There you go. So that's a scene of trees giving you a really nice soft atmospheric depth within that scene.